All right, let's dive into something that might seem simple at first glance. We're talking introductions in English.
Introductions, yeah, they're kind of the first hurdle you got to clear when you're learning a new language, right?
Exactly. It's like your first impression, that initial handshake.
Mm.
You want to get it right. And that's why I'm excited about this episode.
Yeah. Which one?
The one from Shero and Sophia, the English Learning Podcast, remember? The one we've been talking about. It's all about nailing those basic English introductions.
Oh, right. The one for beginners. I think I know the one you mean.
Yeah. What I really liked is how they break it down step by step. It's not just like, here's a bunch of phrases, good luck.
No, they really go back to the basics, like starting with just, hi, my name is, the absolute essentials.
And they even encourage listeners to actually say it out loud right from the get-go.
Which is so important. I mean, so many people get stuck in that passive learning mode, just reading or listening.
But actually vocalizing the phrases,
Yeah.
that's where the magic happens.
Totally. You start to internalize the sounds, build muscle memory.
And I think it also helps with confidence. Once you've said it out loud, it doesn't feel so scary anymore.
Definitely. And Shero and Sophia don't stop there. They build on that foundation, adding layers to the introduction.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, after the name, they introduce age, where you're from, those essential bits of information you usually share when you first meet someone.
It's like a recipe for a solid first impression. A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
It's almost like a formula, right? Greeting, name, age, origin. Having that structure, especially for beginners, it's really helpful.
I like that, like a framework you can rely on.
Yeah.
And speaking of structure, didn't they have a practice dialogue in the episode, something to demonstrate how it all comes together?
They did, a fun little back and forth, showing how those individual pieces fit into a natural conversation.
Perfect. Should we give it a listen? Get a feel for their teaching style?
Let's do it.
All right, here's the clip.
Sounds good.
After the audio clip. I don't know about you, but I thought that was really well done.
Me too. Really clear and concise. And they even managed to sneak in some humor, which is always a plus.
Yeah, it keeps things light and engaging.
Yeah.
Right? Makes you want to keep listening and learning.
Absolutely. And did you notice how they kept reminding listeners to pause and try the dialogue themselves?
Oh yeah, definitely. They were really emphasizing that active participation, not just passively absorbing the information.
Exactly. It's about getting those words out of your head and into the real world, making them a part of your active vocabulary.
So we've got the basics down, the hi, my name is, and all that. But how do we take it to the next level? How do you make an introduction more than just a dry recitation of facts?
Good question. Well, Shero and Sophia, they had some good tips for that.
Okay, spill the tea.
They talked about adding some personal details, stuff that makes you you, like your hobbies.
Right. So
What?
instead of just saying, I'm 20 years old, you could say, I'm 20, and I love to, play video games.
Exactly. It gives the other person something to connect with, a potential conversation starter.
It's like you're giving them a little glimpse into your world.
And they had some other good advice, too. Like, when you're talking about where you're from, don't just say the name of the city.
Add a little flavor.
Yeah.
Tell them what it's known for.
Yeah.
Or maybe a fun fact.
Right. Like, I'm from Chicago, the home of the deep dish pizza, something like that.
Makes it so much more interesting, right? And less, robotic.
Definitely. And I think it also helps with remembering the information if you can associate it with something vivid or personal.
It's like a memory hook.
Exactly. And speaking of memory, did you notice how they handled the whole age thing?
Oh yeah, that was interesting. They talked about all those different ways to say your age, and even how to ask someone their age politely.
It's those little nuances that can really trip you up, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah, I remember when I was learning Spanish, I totally messed that up a few times.
Oh, I bet. It's all part of the process, though, right?
Yeah.
Learning from those mistakes. And Shero and Sophia, they really emphasized that it's okay to make mistakes.
They did. They even dedicated a whole section to common errors, which I thought was really helpful. It's like they were anticipating the things learners might struggle with.
Exactly. And they gave really specific examples, like using the wrong verb tense when talking about your age. Stuff that even native speakers sometimes mess up.
So it's reassuring to know that everyone makes mistakes, even the pros. And at the end of that section, they gave this really simple but powerful tip. Smile.
Oh, yeah. The power of a smile. I think sometimes we forget how much of a difference it makes.
Especially when you're nervous, a smile can really put you and the other person at ease.
Like an instant icebreaker. Okay, so we've covered the basics, the personal touches, the common mistakes, but what about actually putting all this into practice?
Well, Cheryl and Sophia had a really cool section where they did a more advanced practice dialogue, like taking everything they taught and putting it all together.
Oh, right. It was like a level up moment.
Exactly. And as always, they encouraged listeners to pause the podcast and try it themselves. Really get those words flowing.
Yeah, you can't just listen. You got to actually use the language. And they even suggested recording yourself or practicing with a friend.
Yeah, anything to make it more interactive, right?
Yeah.
Get out of your comfort zone a little.
Totally. And then, to wrap it all up, they gave this great homework assignment.
Homework. Tell me more. What was it?
They asked listeners to write down their own introduction, incorporating all the stuff we've been talking about, the details, the personal touches, everything.
So it's like a chance to really personalize the learning, make it your own.
Exactly. And then, of course, practice saying it out loud. Because remember, it's one thing to write it, but it's another to actually speak it confidently.
And that's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah.
To be able to introduce yourself smoothly and naturally in any situation.
Exactly. So yeah, I thought Cheryl and Sophia did a really great job with this episode. It's clear, concise, and packed with useful information.
Agreed. And you know what really struck me? It's not just about learning how to introduce yourself. It's about building that confidence to communicate in a new language.
Oh, for sure. And I think they really nailed that message. It's like they're saying, hey, you can do this. It's not as scary as you think.
And they made it fun, which is so important, especially when you're first starting out. It's got to be enjoyable, otherwise you're not going to stick with it.
No way. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What's one key takeaway that really resonated with you from this deep dive?
You know, it's funny. What really stood out to me was how much they emphasized the importance of pronunciation.
Oh, yeah, they were really big on that, weren't they?
It makes sense, though, right? I mean, you can have all the right words in grammar, but if people can't understand what you're saying...
It's like, what's the point?
Exactly. And Shreo and Sophia, they gave some great tips for practicing pronunciation, like listening closely to the audio and repeating the phrases out loud.
Yeah, mimicking those native speaker sounds. It's kind of like learning a song, you know? Totally. You got to get the rhythm and intonation right. And they even suggested recording yourself to hear how you sound.
Oh, yeah. That can be eye-opening, get it? Sometimes you think you sound one way, but then you hear the recording, and it's like, who is that?
Right. But it's a great way to identify areas where you can improve. And they also talked about practicing with a friend or a language partner.
Which can be so much more fun than practicing alone, right? When you
Yeah.
get that real-time feedback.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think they did a really good job of highlighting the importance of pronunciation and giving listeners the tools they need to work on it.
They did. So I think we've covered pretty much everything from this episode. The structure of introductions, the importance of personal details, pronunciation, even those common mistakes to watch out for.
Yeah, I think we've given our listener a lot to think about and hopefully a lot of practical tips they can start using right away.
That's the goal, to make those first impressions in English count.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with today?
Good question. I think it's this. Don't be afraid to practice, to put yourself out there, even if you're not perfect.
Because making mistakes is part of the process, right?
Exactly. And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become. And who knows, maybe that simple, hi, my name is, could lead to something amazing.
Absolutely. It could be the start of a new friendship, a new job opportunity, or even a whole new adventure. So go out there, practice those introductions, and embrace the journey of learning English.
And have fun with it.
Happy learning, everyone.